So I'm happy to welcome Kit Luce. She's going to be sharing with you authentic and inclusive math talk, and I'm going to let her introduce herself. Are you ready to go, Kit?
I am. Thanks, Melly.
Okay, there you go.
So welcome, everyone. I do have some pictures to show you when we get started after 7:30, and I'll share a little bit about myself, more about myself then. But for now, I'm coming to you from Barrie, Ontario. I'm an educator with the Simcoe County District School Board, and currently I get to spend my days doing math all day long with teachers and students and administrators working with one of the intensive support schools in our board with the Simcoe County District School Board. And I apologize in advance, my voice is a little gravelly tonight, but we'll get through. So welcome, everyone.
And I apologize in advance. That's the quickest I've done the tour of the tools. It usually takes me a couple minutes, but it was pretty quick. So I appreciate it, and we'll just wait for people to be joining in. And yeah, thanks for coming. So maybe we can, just while we're waiting for another couple of minutes, I'm not sure if this is something that Kit's going to be doing, but if you want to indicate in the chat what you're teaching and maybe the strand of math that you're working on right now. Would that help, Kit?
That would be great. And maybe what grade level or division, so I have an idea of who's here. So mostly elementary so far. That's great, Debbie. I hope you get some great information tonight to help support the teachers.
And I just wanted to mention as people are checking in as well, we've still got a couple of minutes, but there are some, we do have some sessions that will be coming, that are coming up that also are promoting math literacy in the classroom. There's one on financial literacy. Next week, there's one on building success criteria for math. So there's several other math sessions that are coming up as well. So you could maybe go to the OTF Connects calendar and take a look and see what's there. And welcome, Vic. We're just welcome, Angie. We've just done a quick tour of the tools, and we're just waiting for maybe one more minute, and then you can get started. And actually, Kit, if you want to get started now, that's fine.
Okay. So, welcome everyone. As I said, my name is Kit Luce, and our talk tonight is about authentic and inclusive math talk. After this session, which is being recorded, you'll have access to the slide deck and all of the resources on the OTF website. But I also have included a short form bit.ly for my slide deck, and you can see it here on the front page here. So that bit.ly/ and then an uppercase OTF math talk. That will give you access to the slide deck. You can make a copy of it. You can keep it for your own resources. There's a lot of resources that I shared during the talk tonight, and also at the end there's quite a list, so it's something that you'll be able to use going forward this year. And I chose this image. This comes from Dr. Nikki Newton, and she has a wonderful website that deals with guided math and math running records. She also has a lot of resources on her site about math talk. And when I went searching for an image, I really liked this because of the good mathematicians think about their maths and use math talk. And that's the message we really want to get out to our students and those of us who work with teachers, to educators as well. Math is so much more than pencil and paper. We want to be doing, and we want to be talking, and we want to be active. So welcome everyone. Now we've already done this piece, so I think we'll skip the map. But I would like to take this time to acknowledge and thank the Indigenous people of the territories on which we're gathered, all over Ontario, for sharing their land as we continue to work and learn together. And so a little bit about me. I am an instruction and assessment facilitator. That's my official title, and essentially it means I'm a math coach. I support one of our intensive support schools. We have 6 of them in our board, and I have the good fortune to work really closely just with one of them. So I'm in the school every day. And you'll see my email there. I'm happy to share my email and my Twitter handle. I'd love to see you on Twitter. I learn a lot from other math educators on Twitter, and I'd love to see you there joining. You can see by the pictures. This, just so you know, was last Christmas. I do not have my house decorated already, but that's my family. I have 4 children, and there's an extra one there joining our family soon, as my firstborn is getting married next year. And we also have 2 golden retrievers and often a guest with my son's dog. And the little one there is a retired sled dog, actually. So those are the important humans and animals in my life. And that's what I come home to every day, so that's pretty nice. So we're going to get started. And there's some images up on the slide deck right now, up on the PowerPoint. And what I'd like you to do is to think back to how you felt as a math learner. So back in elementary school, what did you feel about math? What did you think about math? And choose one of these images that would best represent your feelings about math as a learner. And what I'd like you to do is to use the clip art tool and to put a check mark on the image that best represents your feelings about math as a learner. So if you can do that now, we'll take a minute. Okay, Cindy, sorry. Along the side here, along the left, there's a toolbar, and the bottom one is a clip art. And so if you click it, you have some options that pop out. And one of them should be, oh, where'd they go? One of them should be smiley faces, check marks, little stars. And place it on the image that best represents your feelings as a math learner during elementary school. So Joanne, you say you felt good about math. That's great, thank you. Lauren, excitement, confusion, upset, panic. And feel free to either type in the chat box or click on your mic if you want to talk out loud. That's fine too. So let's take a look. We have 1, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12. So a little more than half of the group have responded. Those of you who are on the treetop trekking image, tell us why this picture resonated with you, either with your mic by talking or by typing in the chat box. How does this picture represent your feelings about math as a learner? Oh, there we go. Sorry, my chat box wasn't moving down, so I'm going to go back up now. Thank you. Melanie, you couldn't understand the methods that felt like they were being forced upon us to memorize. So you really like how math is being taught today. And we know that many of our students feel the same way. Lauren, Debbie, oh, so you really like to see math visually, and we're going to talk a little bit about that. I did some work with Ruth Beatty, who's a math educator and researcher with Lakehead, and she says that about half of us see math visually and about half of us see it numerically, and that's why it's so important to have multiple representations in our lessons. So that's really interesting for me. I do see numbers. I see them numerically. I'm more of a linear thinker. So I work really hard at trying to see things from a visual point of view. Cindy, you've always enjoyed math and look forward to new challenges. Angie, you chose the high ropes course. Melanie, you chose the high ropes course. I like that combination of feeling supported and seeing the clear path ahead, even if maybe it's a little bit challenging. Debbie, that's an interesting point you make about understanding those who struggle. Some teachers I know talk about, say they feel like they're good math teachers because they understand how students struggle, and so they can understand how to help them see the way. Jan, you mentioned something about free-flowing in one direction. Can you tell me what picture that's referring to? Oh, the waterfall. Okay, so thinking that math, there's only one path to the math, and sometimes you have to follow along. I'm just going back up. Constructing new knowledge and ideas, a lot of hands-on. And Joanne, you see a balance of visuals and numbers. Nancy, math was one of my favorite subjects as well. But we didn't have much collaboration or hands-on when I was going to school. That was quite a while ago. I won't tell you exactly how long. Oh, so Jan, the waterfall, it's teacher-directed. That's right. We just had to follow along as students. And Debbie, that do as I do. And that, I'll show you what to do, you do it, and then I'll check to make sure you've done it the right way. Okay. Any other comments before we skip ahead a little bit? And this is a new presentation format for me. It's somewhat one way, so I really appreciate the activity in the chat box, giving me some feedback. I can't see your faces and read your body language, so I really appreciate the comments as we go. Also, Mal, learning from our students, they surprise me every day. In a grade 4 French immersion class today, and a student had an aha moment, and both the teacher and I looked at each other, and and we had goosebumps. It was so exciting about what were they discovering. Okay. Andrew, and it was that practice, practice, practice. So do as I say and just do it. I think about that rote with dividing fractions. Ours is not to reason why, just invert and multiply. And I think, oh my goodness, you're actually telling me not to think. Just do what I tell you. Oh, and Debbie, I'm sorry to hear that you cried. That's really something that, as educators, we never want our students to go through. So I really hope what we're doing tonight will help move this even farther along and help our kids feel good. And even when they're challenged, even when it's frustrating for them, it's not bringing them to tears. Okay. Welcome, Simone. Hello. We're just getting started. Yes, that productive struggle, not just struggle. And finding that zone of where's that place of optimal struggle so that it's not too frustrating, knowing when to take away the training wheels. The sweet spot, I like that. Okay, so tonight we're going to be talking about what is math talk. It's referred to in a lot of the educational research as mathematical discourse. Why is it important? Who is doing the talking in the classroom? And how does that impact equity and inclusion? How can we make our classrooms more and more inclusive? And how do we create opportunities for our kids to talk about math? And then how do we make it worthwhile for them to talk about math? So just like we had all these varied experiences and emotions about math, so will our students. We don't know how they feel about math depending on their grade. They might be very formative. In the older grades, they are bringing with them a wealth of positive and negative experiences. So how do we make our classrooms a wonderful opportunity where it's safe to take risks and it's safe to talk? Lucy West is a researcher and educator. She has lots of videos about effective practices, not just in math, but in all areas of education. She's a wonderful speaker. And you can find out more about her. Just go to YouTube and Google her. She says, the quote from her that I love is that whoever's doing the talking is doing the learning. So I wanted to put us in the right frame of mind by watching this little video. So Mally's going to put this link in the chat box, and you can either click on it directly there and it might take you. Otherwise, you might have to copy and paste the link and go into your web browser.
So the other thing that I'm going to do is play it in and hopefully it will work. So as Kit said, you can click on the link that I've just put in the chat box, or hopefully it's going to work in the program. We'll just see. Here we go.
Oh. Okay, let's see here. Let's get rid of that. Skip the ad. There we go. I'm just going to pull it back. And just before we start, I just want to have you think about who's doing the talking in this math class, who's doing the learning. It's only a minute, and we'll discuss it when we come back. All right. So just a quick little video. This little meerkat guy is my favorite. He makes me laugh every time I watch it. Whoever is doing the talking is doing the learning. What does that make you think about in the classes you're in your own classes, classes you've seen? What does that quote mean to you? Math strings, Vic? Absolutely. Number strings, number talks are a fabulous way to get kids talking. Joanne, those asking the purposeful questions that will get talk generated, not just get an answer. Oh, Cindy, I really like that. Making the person who's talking is engaged in making sense of the math. They're not just telling what the answer is, but they're deepening their understanding. Debbie, absolutely. Teacher talk often is the norm. I think we're getting better at that as educators. But when students aren't talking, they're not reasoning or proving or justifying. Absolutely, they're just listening. And Melanie, yes, they should be talking about their understandings and their strategies. And Sylvie, yes, when kids are talking, they're processing, because we've all had that experience where when you're thinking out loud and you're talking and you're trying to understand the concepts, and you're developing your understanding through the process of talking. Strings really are fun, Angie, aren't they? And kids love them. Oh, Jan, excellent. And we will talk a little bit about which one doesn't belong in Estimation 180. They're some of my favorites, too. When kids are sharing their strategies and tools, when they're asking questions of each other to push their thinking, that's when some of the magic happens. And we see those aha moments, and you can almost see the light bulbs go off. Nancy, the idea that we have to create that safe environment so that kids are free to take risks is really crucial, and we'll be talking tonight about how to make that happen in the classroom. Number talks are great. It does help us assess what they know, what strategies you're doing. Oh, and try the assessment triangle. So assessment is so much more than the unit test that is more traditional. That when you talk about the triangle, I assume you mean observations and conversations and work product, and it gives you a better picture of what your students really understand. Melanie, I think you, when you're talking about think time, I think you've peeked at my slides ahead of time, because we are definitely going to talk about the importance of think time and how it can be a little awkward, but it's so important. Deb, absolutely. That need to be in control, and as teachers, letting go of that control. And Shazadi, I hope I'm pronouncing your name correctly, but yes, for students with special needs, for students with learning disabilities in math, for students who are English language learners, math talk is absolutely crucial. And sometimes we can use tech like EduCreations or just recording so that kids who feel anxious about speaking in front of everybody can still have an opportunity to share their thinking. Okay. Oops. And I just lost my slide deck, Mally. Oh, there we are. Okay, so the Meerkat model is this teacher-centered discussion where all the talk goes towards the students and very little comes back, except perhaps direct answers to questions. And where we want to go to is that student-centered discussion where the teacher can be in the background, can be the facilitator, and we can really get students talking to each other. And I think we've moved, I think we're getting better at moving away from all teacher. I know my learning right now is how to get students talking to each other and not just answering my questions and responding back to me. So that's the goal, that we want kids to get excited and agree with each other and disagree with each other and prove and argue and debate. Debbie, I'm interested in your comment about the difference between talk and discourse. And I hope you contribute as we go through and elaborate on that a bit more for us. So we want our students to have a positive math mindset about math, to develop deep conceptual understanding of mathematical concepts, and an essential component of our instructional approach in math has to be to build that rich and inclusive math talk community. So what happens in mathematical discourse? Students can express their ideas about math concepts. They can clarify their understanding. They can learn new concepts, and they can make connections to prior learning. And Deb, yes, if we just talk about math talk as the number talks or the number strings, that is at one level, but that discourse where people are making conjectures and proving them or disproving them is more that rich mathematical discourse. And sometimes the words we use don't, when we just say math talk, it may not really highlight the depth of that mathematical discourse. So that discourse can also, it helps build on ideas and deepen understanding. They can learn to make conjectures and justify with some proof. And when it's really magical, then the debate happens. And I can't think of anything more exciting than kids arguing with each other about math. So it's a bit of a cycle. So math talk helps students clarify and share their own thoughts. And then as they listen and consider the thoughts of others, they deepen their own reasoning. And when they listen and consider the reasoning of others, it cycles back up. So they clarify and share their own thoughts. So it's a process. And I like to have an image of it of almost that spiral going deeper and deeper and deeper into the math concepts. And what happens when there's really rich math talk going on in a classroom is that not only are our students developing mathematically as individuals, but it enhances the math learning of the whole class community. And it's that that embodiment of the sum of the parts or the whole is greater than the sum of the parts. I think I have that mixed up a bit. But you can feel the energy building as kids are getting aha moments, they're sharing them, they're talking about them, and everyone's seeing new strategies and new approaches. And as someone mentioned earlier about our students with special needs, but for all our students, Math Talk allows for stronger access to the learning. It provides access to the thinking of their peers, which means that they then have access to a much more wider variety of approaches. We all have had those students who come up with really creative, out-of-the-box ideas. And if they were just working on their own or working with a partner, those creative ideas wouldn't be shared with the whole community. Students who are more reserved, who hesitate to answer questions, can be engaged through listening. And our English language learners, they need access to multiple representations of math concepts, and their receptive language is often further developed than their expressive language. So just being able to hear, listen, think about, they will deepen their understanding much more than if they were just answering questions. Yes, Debbie, and this whole idea of Math Talk is authentic and inclusive talk is really for all subjects. Okay, so how do we make this happen? What's the role of the teacher? What's the role of the student? So we're going to go in a minute to watch this video by Kathy Bruce. It's about 6 minutes long, so it's a little bit longer, but she speaks so clearly about this topic that I felt it was really important to include. So as you watch the video, think about what your role is as an educator, what the role of the students in your classroom are, and what applications have you used already, what might be new to you, and what have you seen in other classes. Okay, so, oh, there we go.
So I'm going to put the chat, the link in the chat and also the link in the whiteboard. So when you're finished viewing, if you could put a green check mark to indicate that you're done.
Okay. Okay. So I think I see most check marks now. Joanne, my favorite no. Yes, it's a wonderful short little video. For those of you who haven't seen it, if you go to YouTube and check my favorite no math, then you'll see a strategy that this teacher uses. So comments, what spoke to you from that video? What did you see as the role of the teacher? What do you see as the role of the student? Yes, Shazadi, that role of the teacher is to provide the opportunities. We're in control of the flow of our math class. We need to make sure we're intentionally planning for opportunities for math talk to happen. And yes, Debbie H., so creating that community where accountable talk and talk moves are implemented, and creating that that expectation that this is what's going to happen. Taking up wrong answers, working out wrong answers is really powerful. And Andrew, you agree that stuck out to you, the idea of the wrong answers? And the merging of multiple representations, helping kids see the connections. In some of the classrooms I've been working with, we've been working a lot with patterning and linear growing patterns in particular, and helping kids see the connection between a pattern built with tiles, to graphing that pattern, to seeing that pattern in a table of values, and seeing that pattern written as a rule. And all of a sudden they're going, oh, that's what that means. When I see this pattern with tiles, it looks like this diagonal line. And we're opening up those connections to students. We're kind of, clearing away the fog for them. So Debbie, yes, the role of the student is to be engaged, and right, as a teacher, we have to provide opportunities for them to be engaged and feel safe to do so, that community of trust. And Joanne, that idea of not saving a student, it's so hard when we try and jump in and put the word, not to jump in and give them the words when we see them struggle. But there's so much power when we do allow that struggle, we allow peers to help them out, and they come to some resolutions on their own. Okay. Oh, Angie, absolutely. One of the obstacles for students is really worrying about, is this what the teacher wants? And if they might have had experiences where the teacher had one answer in mind, and that's what they were looking for, and so it was dangerous to take a risk. And so we really have to work hard, and it takes time to build that community where students really realize that it's okay. They can be in charge of their learning, that they aren't just searching for the perfect answer. And modeling those strategies, and that's where we're going next with some resources to build those anchor charts, Debbie. And that fishbowl is a new one to me. I don't know exactly what strategy that is. Can you elaborate on that for us a bit? And well, if I'm not sure if Debbie's writing, but that what struck me about this was the sustained conversation. So it's so much more than the question answer routine. That discussion goes on and on. Oh, okay. So a group is in the center modeling, talking, and the rest is observing. Absolutely, we were talking about that today, but I don't think I knew that a fishbowl was a name for that strategy. So thank you very much for sharing. So we know what it is, we know why it's important, and now how do we make it happen? How do we make that magic happen? So the first thing we need to do, I think somebody might have their mic on. I'm not sure who, but that's okay. So the first thing we need to do is build these norms for math talk in your classroom, and let kids know that this is what you expect and that it's okay, that this is what you want. I'm not sure if you can see that little image there, but it's just an example of a classroom created talk expectations. We're really good at creating behavioral norms, those classroom contracts that everyone signs, and we need to do it in about math talk, about talk in general. So what are some of the math talk norms you've created with your students? And maybe something that is on that sheet there, but maybe there's something new too. Okay. Allow others to have their turn to share. Thank you, Melanie. Sometimes it's just like it's hard for us as teachers to hold back and not jump in. We have students who have difficulty holding back and not sharing. Deb says struggle means you're learning. Absolutely. We have some students who, maybe the math comes easily to them, and the minute they're struck with a challenging problem, they feel, oh, why don't I know this? And so really helping our kids understand that if you don't know this, that's wonderful. That's where the learning is going to happen when you have to struggle. Debbie, that attentive listening and not raising your hand when others are talking, because sometimes when that hand goes up, it means you're not listening, you're just thinking about what you want to say. And Deb, that learning is a challenge. That's the point. If they already knew everything we were doing, we'd be wasting their time. A sharing of the mistakes. Oh, and Melanie, that idea of saying, you know, what the not to do. So don't run instead of walking. That rephrasing it in a positive way. So what will it look like? And one of the resources I have linked is a poster that I created with students about what math talk looks like, sounds like, feels like. And so that might be something you would be interested in doing with your students. Joanne, you're right. Getting kids to ask each other questions is a challenging bit. It's new for many of them. And taking a risk. How do we help those hesitant speakers take that risk while honoring the fact that they may have some anxiety or nervousness about speaking out? Right? It's a tricky balance. And Cindy, that our brains grow. Those images from Joe Bowler's YouCubed website about neurons that grow when we make mistakes really fascinate kids, and I find they really connect with that. Hey, Sylvia, about that attention span, absolutely. One of the things about math talks is that if you're doing a number talk or a number string and it's going longer, it's okay to stop it partway through. Just because you planned on doing 5 or 6 questions doesn't mean that you have to. And so it's okay to stop the talk when you feel like attention is starting to fade. Some of our kids with who have difficulty focusing, our kids with ADHD, even having them, if they come to the carpet, having them stand at the side of the carpet so they're not sitting might be an idea. But it's okay to stop a number string before you're done. And I'm just reading through here. I'm loving the chat. Somebody mentioned the hand gestures. And if you've read about number strings with Kathy Fosno or Number Talks by Sherry Parrish, they both reference the idea of, instead of putting up hands, that when students have an answer, they put their fist on their chest. And that if they want to share their answer, they can pop their thumb up. So they're giving a thumbs up, but it's sitting just right on their chest. And so you can look around as a teacher and see that students are participating, but from the student's point of view, there isn't a sea of hands up. And they don't say, oh, they've got their hand up, I don't have to think anymore. So using those hand gestures of the thumbs and the fingers, and I agree with you, can sometimes help with that. And setting a timer that's perfectly reasonable. Setting a timer to stop the action part of a lesson so you make sure you have time to consolidate. That's okay. Just say, well, We're really excited about it, but we're going to stop now. We'll come back to this same talk at another time. I think that students can engage and talk in small groups. Yeah, so we do a lot of whole group math talk, but even doing number talks and number strings in guided math with that small group is a way for your more hesitant learners to participate. Even having kids talk in their small groups and then choose a spokesman to share back to the whole class can be a way to address that. So there are lots of great ways to set your norms up, build your norms, and we know that it's going to be a work in progress, that it's going to take time, several weeks, possibly months, before you've really built that community in your classroom. So thank you for all of those strategies. The next thing to make this rich discourse happen in your classroom is the teacher role of talk moves. Oh, and thank you, Mally. Yes, so if you want to go back and grab the strategies that have been shared in the chat room, you can go back to the recording and you'll see them pop up and you can copy, make your own notes, that kind of thing. So thanks for that reminder, Mally. So our talk moves. The talk moves are what we need to do as educators to help this get started. There's a lot of different resources for a variety of talk moves. I've included those in the resource section. So for our talk tonight, we're just going to focus on 5 of them. And the first one is revoicing. This is where the teacher tries to repeat what a student has said. Oh, sorry, Debbie, at the very end, it's the last slides. You'll see it. I'll speak to it when it gets there. So the teacher tries to repeat what a student has said and then asks the student to respond and verify. And those two parts are equally important. That it's not just repeating, oh, I heard you said, but is that right? And giving it gives the message that that talk from the student is what you're valuing. And it's not just the words of the teacher that are important. It's particularly helpful when we don't really understand what that student has said. We've all had that experience when a student has shared a strategy and you're thinking in your head, I'm not exactly sure what was going on there. So you try your best to revoice it, try to get there and check in and have them do that check. So that's revoicing. The next teacher talk move is repeating. And this is for you to prompt other students. So ask a student to restate or repeat what a classmate has said. And this is a great talk move for those students who don't yet have the confidence to contribute their own ideas. They're anxious about that. They're worried about whether they're right. They haven't quite come to embrace the power of mistakes. But asking them to repeat or restate what another classmate has said is far less risky for them. And it also requires that students consider what's been said and try to make sense of it. Because just repeating it means that you're thinking about it, you're trying to put it in your own words, and you're trying to understand what exactly your peer said. So it requires an increase in the depth of listening. If students know that they're on call and you might say, so, Savannah, can you repeat what Brianne said? Then they need to focus. And it raises that expectation of active listening, not just thinking about what you want to say next. Next is that reasoning piece. So this asks students to explain why they think their idea is valid. So do you agree with that? Do you disagree with that? Why do you disagree? Why do you agree? And again, this is a move that really encourages all students to pay close attention, because they know you're going to ask not only do you agree, but why do you agree? We know students will go, oh yeah, I had the same answer. Well, why? What's your reasoning? So making them justify their explanation will help deepen that understanding. Another typical math talk move is something we're really used to as educators in literacy, in our language classes, is asking those speakers, either the original speaker or another student, to add on. And this, I think, is what Kathy Bruce was referring to with the sustained conversation. So not just accepting the first response, but pushing our learners to go deeper and deeper and deeper. Again, this is a comfortable place for our students who might be unwilling to start with their own ideas, but if they're just adding on to someone else's ideas, that's less risky. It's also a place to ask for an example. So, can you tell me when that works? So, for example, today in a number string, we were looking at the idea of doubling for mathematics, for multiplication, sorry. And the question was 2 times 4, 4 times 4, 8 times 4. And one of the students made the conjecture that if you double one factor, then the answer is doubled. And so we then had a conversation about, is that always true? Does that always happen? And we are trying to find examples where it did happen and examples where maybe it didn't happen. And it was a really powerful discussion. And the fifth talk move from the teacher's point of view is wait time. And I know this was mentioned earlier. Wait time allows for thinking time. And our classrooms are so fast-paced. We have so much to do in a day, in a week, in a month, in a year, that as teachers we can become anxious and try to speed things along. But wait time is so, so powerful. And not only is it important to wait after a question has been asked, but it's also important to wait after a student has made a response, to give students time to consider what has been said. So some of the research I've been reading about math talks and wait time is that 7 seconds is the beginning of the optimal time for allowing more voices to be able to respond. And that was about 7 seconds. And it may have felt like an awkward pause, but it allows for our students who have processing speed issues to process the question. Then they have to think about their response. They have to plan how they're going to say it. That's a lot of cognitive load to be able to answer a question. And so when wait time becomes a standard of practice in our classrooms, we honor the need for that processing time. It's really valuable for our English language learners, who again, their cognitive load is huge. They are having to think about the question in a language that might not be comfortable for them. They may be thinking in a different language and then trying to translate that in their head and have time to speak it out. And also for our students who have less confidence in their understanding, it gives them time to think about it and say, yeah, I do know this. I can answer this question. So a really valuable thing, ask a colleague to come in sometime, ask your admin, and just say, you know what, I'm really going to be focused on wait time right now, and I'd love you to come in when I'm doing my number string, when I'm doing a minds-on part of a math lesson, or even in other subjects, and monitor my wait time for me. And I think you'll be surprised. I know when I did it, I was surprised at how little time I really was giving students to think. A great place to use think time, this wait time, is before you have students turn and talk, ask them to have their alone thinking time. I know some teachers say close your eyes and think about the answer first. Give them that time, give them that 7 to 10 seconds, and then have them turn and talk to their elbow partner or think, pair, share. Kelly, that's a great idea about if this is going to be part of your practice, making sure it's part of that norm poster you're building, or the common classroom culture, so that students don't feel awkward. Okay. So those are some of the Math Talk moves. They're ones that you can keep in your toolkit. I know teachers who have these Math Talk moves put up high in their classroom, maybe at the back of their classroom, or if you bring kids to the carpet and you're typically looking at that way, they have the teacher talk moves up so that they're a constant reminder for the teacher. So that's a strategy you can use. I know other teachers have them on a little bookmark on their lanyard to help them. They plan and intentionally choose talk moves that they're going to embed in their lessons. And I love that image, Debbie, of leveling the playing field. So that's the teacher role, those Math Talk moves. And then the prompts for students are very similar. So these guidelines for whole class Math Talk. And I'm just skipping ahead a little bit here. All right. So we need, just like we need to learn how to talk as educators, we have to practice that. We ask our colleagues for help. We have to teach our students how to do this. This isn't natural for them. They're not used to being able to talk to each other and explain and agree and disagree. So some of the Math Talk moves are prompts for how they explain their thinking, how to agree with a reason and disagree with a reason, how to build on, how to go beyond or make those connections, and also teaching students to use wait time with each other and get comfortable with that silence when they've said something, not to jump in to fill the space. So these guidelines for whole class Math Talk come from an article called What Works? Stealing Ideas or Building Understanding. And yes, thank you for that prompt. Again, it is absolutely shared in my resources at the end. It's a great article. And the video we're going to watch now, again, we're coming back to Kathy Bruce. It's just a little 2-minute video about using these guidelines for whole class math talk. So let's take a look at that. Again, Mally, that was a great idea. When you finished watching the video, if you could just put a check mark, so it gives me an idea that we're all on the same page. Okay, I'm seeing most of our responses now. So again, these guidelines for whole class math talk, you can incorporate these, embed them in your classroom in a variety of different ways. Some of the links I shared is a bookmark, so kids can have this bookmark taped to their math notebook, taped to their desk. The prompt is always there. You could have the poster up in your classroom. There are sentence starter frames. So these math talks like, I agree because, I would like to build on that idea. And we're explicitly teaching kids how to talk to each other, how to have that rich, intense discourse. And yes, Debbie, we absolutely have to model these. Okay, so we've talked about norms, building the norms in the classroom, the expectations. We've talked about what teachers' role is, and we've talked about what the students' role is and the prompts for them. And then we have to make, if we're going to ask kids to talk, we have to give them something worthwhile to talk about. So we want to spend time on either really rich, juicy problems. I love that phrase. That's one of my teacher friends calls them in her class. This is a really juicy problem today. That are what we call low floor, high ceiling, or some people like to say no floor, no ceiling. And what it just means is that it's a task that is accessible to all of our students, that every child, every learner has a way to interact with that problem. And I've just put some images here of some of my favorites. Enrich.org, and again, I've got the links for you, so don't worry about that. Enrich.org is a wonderful resource of interactive problems, paper and pencil problems, manipulative problems on all sorts of math concepts. The University of Waterloo Problem of the Week is a fabulous resource. These are questions written for grade bands 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, and every week they have a new problem, and you can sign up for the email, and that means that every week in your email you'll get a new problem plus the solution to the previous week's problem. But if you don't want to get those emails all the time, then you can just go to their website, and they are all archived. And the whole year previous are archived in by strand. So you can also search, oh, I want to be teaching some measurement expectations right now. I'm going to go look for the measurement questions. And they are written by Ontario educators in the classroom. So you know they're tried and true. And Graham Fletcher, so this G. Fletchy, he's again a fabulous, very generous math educator. I like to read his blog, and he has a lot to share on his website, including what people are calling 3-act tasks. Yes, thank you. U-Cubed I don't have here, but I do have it in the links. The resources are there. And Mally's being very helpful putting in the links as we go, but they are all on one-stop shopping at the end. So we have those rich and juicy problems, low floor, high ceiling, wide walls, as I saw in the chat. We also have those, just those provocations. So for any kindergarten folk here, are familiar with that provocation idea. It's an image or a problem, and some of my favorites are the images there, which one doesn't belong, and it's just 4 images where kids can choose one of the images and justify why they believe it doesn't belong, and there's no one right answer. Estimation in 180 has wonderful, fabulous images to help kids visually estimate, and I think that's something we don't do enough with. Would you rather, and this is would you rather math, so for those of you who might be familiar with would you rather, make sure you go to the math one because the other is not necessarily student friendly. And then number talk images are just those fabulous images that we ask kids, what do you notice? What do you wonder? So let's look at an example. This question comes from a very new resource from the National Council for Teaching of Mathematics called Taking Action. And you can see it here. I'll read it. 5 classmates walk home from school. Susie walks half a kilometer to get to school. Harold walks 2/3 of a kilometer. Derek walks 3/4 of a kilometer. Maria walks 2/6 of a kilometer. And Sheila walks 4/6 of a kilometer. Sheila says she walks the furthest because the numbers in her fraction are the biggest. So the question for the students, do you agree or disagree? Prove your reasoning. So I'd like you to take a couple of minutes, and our time is going a lot faster than I expected. But I'd like you to take a couple of minutes to think about how your students, or if you're teaching a very young grade where they don't have much experience with fractions, how students might solve this problem. And then I'll share some student examples. So you can, I think the Padlet link goes in here, Mally. Yes. So Mally's going to put a link into a Padlet where I've uploaded some student work samples from a grade 6 class. But if you want to do some work on your own, take a picture of it and upload it. Or if you want to type in the chat box like Deb, students using an open number line might be one way.
So I can set a timer. How many minutes would you like? Maybe 2?
Yeah, let's just give them 2. And I know we obviously give students a lot longer, but let's start with 2. Yes, I'll go back. Here we go. Okay, so we're just coming to a wrap up here. Okay, so I saw in the chat bar fraction strips, either ones that you provide, commercial ones, or ones they create, fraction circles, number lines, Cuisenaire rods. I love Cuisenaire rods, and I think they're highly underused in our classrooms. Definitely, Joanne, intermediate students may go to a decimal format for this and compare them that way. Okay. So let's take a look at the Padlet, and I think the link is quite up there. Mally, maybe could you put it back in? There we go. So that will, just take a look at the Padlet, and it won't show up in our slide deck, I don't think.
I can try and screen share if you want.
I think that's okay. Well, I think we'll just, because of time, I think we'll just give people a minute to look at it. And you'll see 3 different student samples. And just what do you notice about what the students have done, because interestingly, they've all got the right answer. But there are some very common misconceptions in that work. Right, that idea that what a unit fraction is and how it's part of a whole. You might notice that equal wholes, yes. Especially if they're given something like grid paper, that doesn't, they might, choose a rectangle of thirds and fourths and sixths, but the holes aren't the same size. How do they compare? And interestingly, in this case, they still got the right answer that way. I don't have the samples up here, but we did do some work with this task using virtual fraction tiles. And what we noticed right away was that the students were able to just click and put the fractions in and get the answers without a lot of thinking. There was so much more thinking and talking when they had to create their own representations. Debbie, that's a great idea. Can I put it back on you a little bit? What questions would you ask? And what questions, for the whole group, what questions would you ask to help them clarify their thinking? I'm putting you back on the spot here, but maybe our colleagues in the chat can help. And what unit of measure does each fraction represent? And can you compare them? And really, it depends on what is the math thinking you want to surface. So what was my learning goal for this task? And this task could certainly be appropriate for many different expectations, many different grade levels. So the questions we ask would depend on the learning goal. Some of the students did have that idea of how much they had to walk, how much was left, where their homes were in relationship to each other, comparing fractions and ordering fractions. And so think about, with problems like this, when you're planning, what other math talk moves could you use? What would fit here? Would repeating, would reasoning be the best choice? Okay. So I'm mindful of our time. But we've built the norms. We've learned our talk moves. The students have learned their moves. We've given them something worthwhile to talk about. So what could go wrong? What could go wrong? Maybe we get the same students talking all the time. Should we call on students whose hands aren't raised? What is the norm in your classroom for that? Where does that fit in creating a safe, risk-free environment? What if we have students who share an idea that's way off base? What do we do then? How do we fix that without confusing or losing the rest of the class? And how do we get students to talk to each other instead of directing them to us? all the time. So those are some things I want you to think about as we go through, as you plan and as you use these in your classroom. So here's your mission, should you choose to accept it. How can you ensure that all students will have the opportunity to demonstrate their mathematical understanding during this lesson I'm planning? Start slow. If this is new learning for you, start with one talk move. Pick one. Plan. I can't emphasize that enough. Be really intentional about what you're doing. And, you know, make a pledge that you'll have no more sleeping meerkats in our classroom. I'm just seeing a few other notes in the chat room. Sylvie, for those who don't like being called on, yes, preparing them ahead of time. Sometimes it helps to give them a math talk prompt. So, you know, today I want you to use I agree because. And when you're ready to share something you agree with, let me know. And that sometimes helps reduce anxiety. So just a quick view here so you know, the last few slides. This slide deck has bookmarks and posters and sentence frames for Math Talk moves. There's a great one, 100 Math Discourse Questions. I think it's a fabulous resource that's in a printable form. The next slide is more of a theory. So a lot of the research I did for this talk, these articles and the research are on this slide. The next one is some of the video links, some of the ones I shared, other videos of teachers using Math Talks and Math Congress in their classroom. And so if you want to watch someone else and think about it, you can do that. And then the last slide are those resources for rich tasks and images that can help kids talk and wonder and share. So those are my resources. I hope tonight was helpful. Thank you, Mally. They'll be sent out. And you also have the bit.ly link. Please reach out to me. Let me know how it's going. And follow me on Twitter. And I'd love to hear from you. So thanks very much. And I'm happy to stay for a few minutes if anyone has any questions. My voice is holding out for a little bit longer.
Thanks, Kit. That was really great. And thanks for sharing all those ideas, and especially probably the most robust resource page I've ever seen. And really, some really great ideas that people can use tomorrow in their classrooms. First of all, thanks everyone for coming. We'd love you to complete the feedback form. You can get there a couple of different ways. One of them is click on the link that I've just put in the chat. The second one is you can click on the link that's on the slide. It's the only live link in the whole presentation. And the third one is when you log out of the Blackboard room, you'll be sent directly to the survey, and you can complete that. Once you've done that, you'll be directed to a certificate that you can put in your professional portfolio. As I said at the beginning, and I'm sorry for the long wait, we went through the tour of the tools pretty quickly. We have